Joining us now to share additional insight into the 2021 beef industry policy priorities is South Dakota Cattleman Todd Wilkinson. He's the newly elected Vice President of NCBA. Todd, sustainability is one of the top issues for NCBA over the coming year. Why is it so important that our industry engage in this issue?
Well, Kevin, unless somebody has been living in Iraq for the last few weeks, the Biden administration has made a priority climate. And while that's always been a focus for NCBA and our producers, it's even more important now that we talk about the science that's on our support or in face of the issues that are out there. You know, we hear all the bad things, but we got a good story to tell, and we can bring science to bear and wear the white hat in this conversation.
You know, it's not just about the government and policy priorities, it's also about the consumer. How important is consumer confidence in the sustainability of the beef industry to our very future?
Well, it's the consumer confidence that I, as a producer, pay more attention to, frankly, than what the government is indicating, because you know our job is to sell a product, and we want that consumer to understand where their beef comes from, to have confidence that their beef is raised in a sound manner, and to really grasp all the good things that come out of beef production. And that consumer can rest assured that beef production is really one of the good stories out there, and that we're a solution to climate change and the whole sustainability issue. It's not very often that you get to talk about things that are a solution rather than a problem. And the fact that we can toot our own horn and talk about the positive things that beef production does to the ground, the soil, and producing a product that's delicious and good for everybody, that's a great message.
As you mentioned, the beef industry really does have a great story to tell. After all, we are the original upcyclers and the original plant-based protein, so to speak. So, Todd, what opportunities does that present to our industry?
Well, and you know, to pick it up right where you were talking about, Kevin, that the upcycling message is amazing. You know, you can take that cow out there, and you know, and I know how that cow is going to go out and graze on that forage, and for all intents and purposes, a lot of the ground that our cattle are grazing on across the country is not able to be farmed or broken up. That cow goes out there and digests that plant-based product and converts that carbon, and we end up with a product that the consumer can understand is really the circle of life. I mean, too often we forget that you know, we talk about greenhouse emissions and we talk about all the other issues, but methane is just a product of nature. It's no different than it was 200 years ago when there were millions of buffalo roaming across the area that I live. And we actually have less cattle right now than we did buffalo a couple of hundred years ago. We're producing no more methane. And the other thing, there's some key facts out there, and I just wish people would listen to them a little bit. You know, the cow herd today is a third less than it was in the 70s, and yet we're producing the same amount of beef as we were on a third less animals. You know, if that's not a great story, and if that's not a hats off to the genetic producers across and the seed stock operators across this country, I don't know what is. You know, the American rancher and farmer is nature's answer to environmentalism, because they do it for a living and they produce a product that fits all of those niches.
So, Todd, can you tell us specifically how NCBA is working with farmers and ranchers and other industry stakeholders to share the message of beef industry sustainability?
Well, we're of course working with the Global Roundtable. We're also working with our environmental working group, which is made up of producers from across the country, cow-calf operators, seed stock operators, finishing facilities, backgrounding facilities. Everybody's kind of coming together and working to address this. We have the answer. We just need to be able to convey it to the consumer in a method that they understand. I can get people lost in the weeds a bit, and I try not to when I talk about something like GWP star. That's a new method of measuring methane and greenhouse gas emissions. And it's probably the most accurate method of measuring those things. And when you look at that science, when you actually look at that new measurement, we don't have a greenhouse emission problem. The methane today is no more than it was 10 years ago from livestock production, and it simply recycles back into the carbon. And we just need to get the measurements understood by the public. They are generally accepted already by science. And we need to get that out to that consumer, because when they hear that burger or that steak that they're eating is a positive to the environment, that just makes that experience all the better.
And, we spent a lot of time talking about the live cattle segment of sustainability, but in reality, sustainability touches all parts of the beef supply chain. Todd, why do you think it's so important to have an organization like NCBA who can address and represent each element of the beef industry supply chain from gate all the way to plate?
Well, and Kevin, I think you bring up a perfect point, because all too often our industry, the cattle industry, seems to focus on one facet. Well, you can't look at sustainability as an issue for just the cow-calf producer. You can't look at it for an issue of just the packer or just the feeder. It really goes through that entire cycle. So that retailer has to be sitting there with us in the discussion. That feeding facility has to be part of it. The cow-calf producer certainly has to be part of it. When you put all the pieces together, that's where that circle of life, and that's where the message comes from. Because if we just focus, as too often this industry does, on just a segment, you can't get the public the honest answer. And the honest answer is, we're the solution to the greenhouse emission issue for much of agriculture. And we've just got to put that image out there and tell that message, because, hey, we got a wonderful product and we got the best message to tell. And again, I'll go back to the way I started. I love to wear my white hat and be able to talk about the positive things that this beef industry can do for all of us.
Thanks, Todd, for your time and your leadership for our organization. I'm sure we'll visit with you more throughout the year.